Hello, welcome to the fourth and final day of the 2018 Goodwood Festival of Speed, where I'm finishing it with something special. This Maserati Grand Cabrio. Right, this is the paddock area during the Goodwood Festival of Speed. This is the Michelin Supercar paddock, which is basically where it's all happening. But today we're down here with Maserati. Interesting fact, outside of the Levante, I've never spent a great deal of time in a Maserati. I've always heard them driving past me and they sound unbelievable. You have to approach it, even though it sounds like a sports car, a very loud sports car, this is much more of a Grand Tourer. It's not about lap times, it's about good times. And today it's extremely good because this thing is rocking a naturally aspirated V8 pushing out 460 horsepower. So we're going to start this up very shortly. Unfortunately, it's 35 degrees and we have to wear long sleeves because we're in the UK and track regulations say that we have to wear long sleeves. So in a minute, we're going to put jackets on. Don't think we're idiots, we just have to. Thankfully, this is the convertible, so we'll be able to use Mother Nature as air conditioning, and then we're going to immerse you really in what it's like going up the Festival of Speed hill climb in something that sounds like this. How good does that sound? It also looks like they've upgraded the infotainment screen as well, which is pretty awesome. Belt up, I've got to say, Festival of Speed has been super intense, so it's really nice to be able to sort of do my last drive in something so beautiful. It's going to be a real tranquil finish, flying up the hill climb in something that, okay, it sounds pretty loud, but it's a nice place to be. Okay, skid lid on, long sleeves on, roof down. Wow. You know, I've had the luxury and honor of being able to do this for a few years in a row, but every time you pull up to that start line, your heart starts going, you see the caliber of the cars in front of you, and you realize that any second now you are next. We've got marshals waving us forwards. They're going to check helmets, wristbands. Where you settle in and you realize that not only are there thousands of people watching you, you're also being live streamed on television. Are we ready? And we're off. Wow, it's got a lot of lovely linear pull to it. Turning's better than I thought it would be. Running out a little wide, take this corner with the tap of brakes. Woohoo! Still playful. We're flying up here now, onto the gantry. Slamming over that gear. Woohoo! Onto the brakes. Lock it up, but it's playful. It sheds off speed considering its size. We're flying up towards the flint wall. This is where it can get a little bit dicey. Woo! But it sounds amazing! Tap of brakes, tight right-hander. Wow! It's got a great sound to it, absolutely great. And we're almost at the top. Flat out, and over the line! And just like that, it was over! Wow. Do you know what? I've got more adrenaline than I thought I'd have. We've really gathered some pace. That engine sounds fantastic. We've got another Maserati chasing us behind. Whew. If I was hot before, I'm really hot now. And this is where we join the world's greatest car park at the top of the hill. Listen to that. Listen to that beautiful barbling V8. There's one thing Maserati know how to do right is the sound. Like I said, it's short, but incredibly sweet. Oh man. Okay, so our time at the world's greatest car park has come to an end. We now all stack up and go back down the hill, and then we're going to rendezvous back at the Maserati stand. Let me just tell you something. 460 horsepower, never felt so cool. Let's go down.
Don't you
at the mothership. We're at Maserati HQ here at Goodwood Festival of Speed. Now, despite the fact that we've just stepped out of the Grand Cabrio Sport, 460 horsepower, wild V8, this thing, I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks menacing, but you would never assume that this thing is rocking, wait for it, 590 horsepower in an SUV. Now, for those of you guys that watch this channel regularly, you may or may not know that I am on the hunt for a new SUV. This is well in line. I didn't expect this to be here. The reason being that it's actually going to be launching in America first. Now, that's not normally the case, so Americans, I'm super jealous. Anyone over there wants to invite me over to go and drive it, that would be amazing. Ferrari developed V8, twin turbocharged engine, and the great thing about it is that it is a Maserati. Now, at the minute, the SUV market's interesting because quite a lot of the products are sort of Me Too SUVs. Every brand is launching one, but when you understand the philosophy and history of Maserati, they started, their very first car was a race car over 100 years ago, right? So the DNA, which you can see from that MC12 over there, which by the way was incredibly successful in endurance racing, has filtered down into their more daily drivers, such as this. Honestly, I'm dying to get in one. Maserati, if you're watching, please arrange that, because I would imagine it sounds and drives fantastic. Anyway, speaking of things that were unexpected, let's move down the line. If any of you guys watched my videos with Maserati at the beginning of the year when it was nice and snowy and they sent me to Courmayeur in Italy, you'd be forgiven for not wanting to associate four-wheel drive with the Maserati brand, because as I just said, they are inherently more of a sports car brand. This is a four-wheel drive Maserati. I feel the need to share that with you because everyone I speak to, it's the last thing on their mind that they can have four-wheel drive traction from this car. Look at it here, SQ4, same four-wheel drive system that is out of the Levante. Take it from me, while we're in this environment, it's beautiful, lush and hot. I drove it in the snow. Not only had it got loads of traction, but it was also playful too. So the car doesn't take itself too seriously, it's still very engaging, but I just wanted to highlight it because the amount of people that I speak to in passing who don't realize that Maserati offer four-wheel drive saloon cars is astounding. And then we move on to the Quattroporte. Now, that name is, for me, synonymous with Italian luxury grand tourers, this being the latest. George, if you want to skip around there, and let's take these guys on the inside and show them what it's like to be in a beautiful luxury Italian grand tourer. And behold, seamless transition, the innards of the Quattroporte. There's something about Italians and the way that they engineer emotion into a car. I don't have the keys, we're on a stand, but I can already feel, simply by the smell of being in here, there is an element of emotion and care and passion that is inherently in every stitch. As I mentioned, this brand is over 100 years old. They came from racing, and what they're very proud of is the story of the brand. Now, there is an element which, again, might not be widely known. The symbol of Maserati is the trident. The significance of that is that the number 3, the 3 tips of the trident, has become significant in the design language of the car. Let me show you what I mean on the outside. Let's work our way around to the front. Obviously, the first thing you see when you hit the front of the car is the big Maserati trident. That is also actually disguising the radar system in that car. But there's very subtle hints at the number 3 throughout the design language of the car. Indicators on the headlights, laid out in 3. Ports on the side, 3 ports. Even the spokes on the wheels are arranged in a configuration of 3. That's just a few small details, but this is the design language that resonates through every single range of the Maserati lineup. Speaking of which, this car, last but not least, this is the car that I'm most familiar with. This is the Levante that I drove at first and fell in love with the concept of an Italian SUV. It might not be something that you think of at first when you think of Italian cars, particularly sporty ones like this, but I spent 2 days up in the Italian Alps, and the first thing that came to mind for me was, being a sort of die-hard petrol head at heart, was imagine one day when they stick a really great big engine in this car. Well, we opened our stand tour with exactly that, and if it blends the quality and sophistication of the interior with an engine developed by their buddies across the road in Maranello, surely that has got to be one of the most beautiful combinations in the SUV world. So, I think that's a quick enough tour. One thing I want to show you now is the final thing, which is the interior of the new Trofeo. The significance of which there is a finish in there unlike anything I've seen before. So we're going to make a real hard cut and jump in that car. And welcome aboard what might be a world first. I do believe this is the first time that this car has been shown to the public in the UK. Now, we're very familiar with having carbon fiber in cars, particularly cars which are sports orientated. However, this is a really interesting finish. So we've seen gloss carbon, we've seen matte carbon, exposed weave carbon, we've seen artificially. This is real exposed weave carbon. It actually has the texture of it. There are certain cars which actually print the aesthetic look of carbon and they claim it's carbon. This is the real deal. This is an actual dry carbon exposed weave. It's so real that Maserati had to develop a new cutting technique. The issue with cutting carbon fiber is that the ends of the material fray and you don't get a very crisp, clean finish. So Maserati have had to come up with an entirely new way of cutting carbon to finish it without a gloss, without any finish at all. And what's great about it is I don't think you realize how many surfaces that you actually interact with when you're inside a car. You're constantly touching and interacting with various things. When you just rest your arm on here, you feel this nice wave pattern underneath your wrist. When you interact with these slots to open simple things like drinks holders, you're touching bare exposed carbon. And it might seem like such a simple thing, but Maserati are all about immersing you in the further story of the brand. Touch points like this remind you that the lineage of this car came from things like the MC12 behind us, and that's why it makes sense for these guys to have a roaring V8 engine in an otherwise very practical car. So I want to be getting in one of these very soon. Who knows? There might end up being one on the channel if I fall in love with the drive, as I did with the Lusso Levante. Okay, here we are inside the Maserati Ghibli with Mike Biscoe, General Manager of Maserati UK. As far as titles go, that's up there, mate. That's pretty awesome. So Mike and I were just having a chat earlier off camera about what Goodwood means to us. Can we run by your experiences of Goodwood? I was saying earlier that I've been coming since I was quite young. You've been coming for how long?
I think probably the best part of 22 years. I can't claim to have been here at the very, very beginning, but
that's not far off.
But not far off.
Fabulous. Yeah. So how important is it, or what does it mean for Maserati to be here?
I mean, for us today, you know, this is to all intents and purposes the British Motor Show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for us, it is as important in global terms as Geneva or Shanghai or Los Angeles, or I mean, it is a tier one motor show in the way that we would define it. I think here, you know, it's a particular experience. I think, you know, as we were discussing before, when we were having a chat earlier, I mean, not only being able to see the cars here physically, and also all the modern cars we have, but also all the historic cars. And the thing that makes this experience truly unique is actually seeing the cars in action, hearing the cars. You know, in terms of the historic cars, seeing the car from the right period, and very often with the driver who was made the car famous at the time, and all together and not kind of roped off and untouchable, but, you know, approachable. You can talk to these guys. You can, you know, look inside the car. I mean, it's just an incredible experience.
I mean, on that note, we're both very fortunate to have passes here to the driver's lounge. How surreal is it? I mean, yesterday I was in there having my full English, and, you know, like Jensen Button walks in.
Yes, absolutely.
like while I'm halfway through my, you know, eggs. It's an unreal event. For me, looking at where Maserati started as a racing brand, first and foremost, to be able to carry that heritage through, you've got an MC12 here, and that's actively live running up the hill.
As chance will have it, we've arranged to bring 3, and there's somebody else who brought another one, so actually there are 4 MC12s here.
Unbelievable.
Now, bearing in mind, we, you know, in terms of these are all course, version course, so not the road-going version. They're all race or special series versions. of which we made 12, 13.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
4 of them actually here at Goodwood
here.
this weekend. So
Yeah.
Ferrari, build all our petrol engines. Really
I
good.
lifted up the bonnet earlier. You've got the iconic red cam tops there
Yeah.
with your carbon plate on top. I mean, as far as a marriage of 2 brands goes, it's pretty up there with something special, isn't it? Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Have fun.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, that was my 4th and final day at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Massive thank you to Maserati for making my final day here incredibly special. Now I've got to work out how to get my hands on one of those Levantes. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I shall see you next time. Ciao.